History of illegal immigration and use of cages in the U.S. Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, IIRIRA, of 1996. Background and provisions. IIRIRA overview. The Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, IIRIRA, was enacted as part of the broader Omnibus Consolidated Appropriations Act of 1997. Signed into law by President Bill Clinton on September 30, 1996, it aimed to strengthen immigration enforcement and tighten control over illegal immigration. Penalties and enforcement. The act increased penalties for immigration violations, including illegal entry and overstaying visas. It introduced mandatory detention for certain categories of immigrants and expanded the list of crimes that could lead to deportation. Expedited removal. IIRIRA introduced expedited removal procedures, allowing for the rapid deportation of individuals caught within 100 miles of the border who could not prove they had been in the U.S. for more than 14 days. Reentry bars. The legislation established reentry bars that prohibited individuals who were unlawfully present in the U.S. for more than 180 days from reentering the country for 3 to 10 years, depending on the duration of their illegal stay. Public charge rule. IIRIRA reinforced the public charge rule, which barred immigrants likely to become dependent on government assistance from obtaining permanent residency. IIRIRA led to a significant expansion of detention facilities. The mandate for mandatory detention of certain categories of immigrants, such as those with criminal convictions or those seeking asylum without proper documentation, increased the number of detainees. Increased funding. The act authorized additional funding for the construction and maintenance of detention facilities to accommodate the growing number of detainees. Impact on families and children. The increased detention of families and children led to growing concerns about the conditions in these facilities. The use of chain-link enclosures, which were later criticized as cages, was part of this expansion during the Clinton administration. Broader immigration context under Clinton. NAFTA and migration. The North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, which took effect in 1994, had complex impacts on migration. While it was intended to boost economic cooperation between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, it also contributed to economic disruptions in Mexico that fueled migration northward. Operation Gatekeeper. In 1994, the Clinton administration launched Operation Gatekeeper, a border enforcement initiative aimed at curbing illegal immigration in the San Diego area. This operation included the construction of physical barriers and increased patrols, leading to a significant reduction in crossings in that region but also pushing migrants to more dangerous crossing areas. Evaluation and criticism. Criticism and human rights concerns. Human rights organizations criticized the expanded use of detention and the conditions within these facilities. Concerns were raised about the treatment of detainees, particularly children and families, and the long-term psychological effects of detention. Political and public reactions. The tough stance on immigration enforcement was politically contentious. While it garnered support from those advocating for stricter immigration controls, it also faced opposition from immigrant rights groups and advocates for more humane immigration policies. Conclusion. The Clinton administration's policies, particularly through the enactment of IIRIRA, had a lasting impact on the U.S. immigration system. The expansion of detention facilities and stricter enforcement measures set precedents that influenced subsequent administrations. Understanding these historical contexts helps frame current debates on immigration and border security. Obama administration. Surge of unaccompanied minors, 2014. During President Obama's administration, a significant event that impacted U.S. immigration policy was the surge of unaccompanied minors crossing the border, primarily from Central America. This event led to several challenges and policy responses. Here's a detailed look at the situation. Background. Increase in numbers. In 2014, the U.S. saw a dramatic increase in the number of unaccompanied minors arriving at its southern border. Over 68,000 children were apprehended, a significant rise from previous years. Most of these children were from the Northern Triangle countries of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, fleeing violence, poverty, and persecution. Factors driving the surge: violence and crime. Gang violence and organized crime in the Northern Triangle were major push factors. Many children were escaping threats from gangs that sought to recruit them forcibly. Economic hardship. Severe poverty and lack of economic opportunities in these countries also contributed to the migration. Family reunification. Some minors were attempting to reunite with family members already in the U.S. Misunderstandings of U.S. policy. Smugglers often spread misinformation, suggesting that children would be allowed to stay in the U.S. if they reached the border, contributing to the influx. Temporary holding facilities. Use of chain-link enclosures. To manage the sudden influx, the Obama administration utilized chain-link enclosures in Border Patrol processing facilities. These enclosures, often referred to as cages, were intended to be a temporary solution to prevent overcrowding. These facilities were designed for short-term use, where children would stay until they could be transferred to more suitable locations. Policy and humanitarian response. Emergency shelter. The administration set up emergency shelters on military bases and other locations to accommodate the overflow. Legal and administrative measures. The administration accelerated the adjudication of immigration cases involving unaccompanied minors and increased funding for legal services to assist them. International cooperation. Efforts were made to work with the governments of Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries to address the root causes of migration and improve border security and humanitarian assistance. Controversy and criticism. Conditions in detention facilities. The use of chain-link enclosures was widely criticized by immigrant advocacy groups and human rights organizations. Critics highlighted the inhumane conditions and the trauma inflicted on children. Policy repercussions. The Obama administration's handling of the crisis faced scrutiny, particularly regarding the adequacy and appropriateness of the facilities used to house children temporarily. Long-term effects. Policy precedents. The policies and facilities established during the Obama administration set precedents that were used and expanded upon by subsequent administrations. Ongoing challenges. The surge of unaccompanied minors highlighted the need for comprehensive immigration reform and better preparedness for humanitarian crises at the border. Trump administration. Trump administration's immigration policies and border security. The Trump administration implemented several significant policies and measures related to immigration and border security. Implementation. In April 2018, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced the zero-tolerance policy, which mandated the prosecution of all adults illegally crossing the border. This led to the separation of thousands of children from their parents as the adults were placed in federal criminal custody. Impact. The policy resulted in widespread public outcry and criticism due to the traumatic impact on separated families and the conditions in detention facilities where children were held. Reversal. Due to immense backlash, President Trump signed an executive order in June 2018 to end family separations. However, challenges in reuniting separated families persisted. Migrant Protection Protocols, MPP. Remain in Mexico Program. Officially known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, MPP, this policy required asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their cases were processed in the U.S. immigration courts. Implementation. The policy was implemented in January 2019, leading to tens of thousands of migrants being sent back to Mexico under often precarious conditions. Outcomes. While intended to deter illegal immigration and reduce court backlogs, the policy faced criticism for exposing migrants to dangerous conditions and lacking adequate resources to handle their cases fairly. Border wall construction. Promises and construction. A central theme of Trump's campaign and presidency was the construction of a border wall. By the end of his term, approximately 450 miles of new and replacement barriers were constructed. Funding and legal challenges. The funding for the wall was contentious, leading to a significant government shutdown and legal battles over the diversion of military funds for its construction. Crime and enforcement. Crackdown on illegal immigration. The Trump administration increased interior enforcement, leading to more arrests and deportations of undocumented immigrants with criminal records. Statistics. According to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, there was an increase in arrests of criminal aliens during Trump's tenure compared to previous years. Claims and counterclaims. Trump's statements. President Trump frequently claimed that his administration had created the safest border in history, citing the reduction in illegal crossings and the construction of the border wall as evidence. Criticism and reality. Critics argued that while some metrics showed reductions in illegal crossings, other factors like the humanitarian crisis at the border and the treatment of migrants painted a more complex picture. Border security metrics. Apprehensions and encounters. The number of apprehensions at the border fluctuated during Trump's presidency, with significant surges in 2019 and 2020 due to various factors, including seasonal trends and policy changes. Impact of policies. Policies like MPP and increased interior enforcement were credited with reducing certain types of illegal crossings but also faced scrutiny for their humanitarian impact. Biden administration's approach to immigration and border security. The Biden administration has made several significant changes to U.S. immigration policies and border security measures, marking a departure from the approaches taken by the Trump administration. Executive actions. Upon taking office, President Biden signed multiple executive orders to reverse many of Trump's immigration policies. These included ending the Remain in Mexico program, migrant protection protocols, halting the construction of the border wall, and rescinding the travel bans targeting predominantly Muslim countries. Family Reunification Task Force. Biden established a task force aimed at reuniting families separated under Trump's zero-tolerance policy. This initiative seeks to address the long-term impacts of family separations and provide support to affected families. Statistics and context. Surge in migrant encounters. The number of encounters at the U.S. Mexico border increased significantly during Biden's first year in office. Factors contributing to the surge include economic hardship in Central America, violence, and perceptions of more lenient U.S. immigration policies. Challenges in processing. The increase in crossings has strained U.S. immigration facilities and resources, leading to overcrowded conditions and logistical challenges in processing and sheltering migrants. Security concerns. Reports of terrorist crossings. There have been reports of individuals on terrorist watch lists attempting to cross the U.S. southern border. These incidents have raised concerns about national security and the effectiveness of border screening processes. Government response. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, has stated that they have measures in place to intercept and manage these threats. However, the increased border traffic complicates these efforts. Crime rates and immigrant populations. Research findings. Studies generally show that immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, commit crimes at lower rates than native-born Americans. However, public perception often associates higher crime rates with increased immigration. Policy focus. The Biden administration has emphasized a more humane approach to immigration enforcement, focusing on deporting individuals who pose a threat to public safety rather than those without criminal records. Local and national impacts. Community safety. The presence of large numbers of undocumented immigrants can lead to concerns about community safety, though empirical evidence often contradicts these fears. The administration's policies aim to balance enforcement with humanitarian concern. Law enforcement challenges. Local law enforcement agencies sometimes face challenges in distinguishing between immigration enforcement and maintaining public order, impacting their relationship with immigrant communities. Broader security measures. Border security funding. The Biden administration has requested funding to improve technology and infrastructure at the border, aiming to enhance surveillance and interception capabilities without relying heavily on physical barriers. International cooperation. Efforts to address the root causes of migration through international aid and cooperation with Central American countries are part of a broader strategy to improve regional stability and reduce migration pressures. Economic considerations. Public benefits. Undocumented immigrants generally have limited access to public benefits. However, they do contribute to the economy through labor and taxes. The administration's policies aim to integrate these contributions while ensuring fair and effective use of taxpayer funds. Healthcare and education. Access to healthcare and education for undocumented immigrants remains a contentious issue. Policies vary by state, with some providing broader access than others.